Hi friends, how are you? And welcome to Kinds with Cole. So hello. How are you guys doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. So in today's case, we will be talking about just how far a mother will go to feel needed by her child. Did she truly have Munchausen syndrome, or did she just simply want her son gone? Today, we will be talking about Lacey Spears. Lacey Spears was a mother to a little boy named Garrett. Lacey was originally from Decatur, Alabama, and had ended up moving to New York after Garrett's father, a police officer, had passed away in a car accident. Lacey had a heart that was made for caring for people. So when she and Garrett had moved into this fellowship in New York, it worked out perfectly. Now, this fellowship community was essentially a community of elderly people, and they allowed those who worked there to have free housing and education for their children. So for Lacey, this was perfect. You know, she felt Garrett was in a safe community and could run around, within his limits, of course, and she could help take care of the elderly, which she enjoyed doing. Garrett was a sickly baby growing up. He was born in 2008 when Lacey was only 20 years old, and he was constantly in and out of the hospital. He had chronic ear infections and could never keep his formula down. Even after changing it time and time again, baby Garrett just couldn't hold it down and was losing weight. It was a struggle, as I'm sure some of you know. Just having a sick kid, just being sick for a couple days is tough, let alone one that is constantly sick and in and out of the hospital. Lacey had decided to start a blog to write about Garrett's journey and her struggles and the ups and downs of going through life with a sick baby as a single mother. And it was in hopes that she could find others to relate to and to seek support from. And she did. The online community that read her blog gave her so much support, and it was just nice for Lacey to have that. She's a single mother with a sickly kid up in New York. She's originally from Alabama. It's nice to have that support. It's nice to know that you are not the only one going through struggles in life. When Garrett was just 2 months old, he had been admitted to the hospital because of severely high sodium levels. His levels were at 166 at just 2 months old. By the grace of God and the amazing doctors at the hospital, Garrett's levels returned to normal and he was released, but the doctors could not figure out why this baby's sodium levels were so high. At 9 months old, the doctors told Lacey that Garrett needed a G-tube because he was malnourished and wasn't gaining weight the way that they wanted him to. And after trial and error of every formula on the market, he couldn't keep any of them down. Usually doctors say that some spit up is normal, but Garrett was well past this stage. He was 9 months old. He should have been able to keep formula down by now, so they wanted to insert a G-tube. You then use that tube and attach it to like a feeding bag or a syringe, but that is how you would get your food and any medicine you may need to take by mouth in all of your nutrition. And this G-tube would stay in until the doctors felt that Garrett is ready for it to be removed and consume his bottles by mouth. By 2013, Garrett is now 5 years old and still had this feeding tube in. The doctors were dumbfounded on why this little boy, who was in a healthy condition now, his weight was where they wanted it, his developmental skills all were normal. He was a normal, healthy little boy. So why did he still have this feeding tube in? Lacey wanted it in and refused to allow the doctors to take it out. Now, can you imagine this little boy who is 5, wanting to go run around and play with his little friends he meets, or just kids that are around, at the playground, and he has a G-tube in still? I know that he can still function with his G-tube in, and I just don't know why any mother would want that for her kid. Why would you want your kid to be sick? But Lacey did. On January 14th, 2014, Garrett was admitted to the hospital. He had seizure-like symptoms, along with a fever, horrible stomach pains, and horrendous headaches. They admitted him to the hospital, and they hooked him up to a video EEG machine to monitor his brain activity. Slowly but surely, they noticed that little Garrett was improving, but things took a turn for the worst 2 days later, when all of his symptoms and previous conditions had returned and gotten worse. Tests were carried out to try to figure out what is wrong with this little boy. One of the tests showed that Garrett's sodium levels were 182. 2 days ago, when he was first admitted, his sodium level was 138. The average person, I believe, has 135 to 145, dependent upon a few variables. But that is your normal range. Doctors were once again left speechless on what caused this little boy's sodium levels to spike to 182 within a 2-day period, while he was under the care of those at the hospital. There's no way that it naturally could have spiked up that high. The hospital ended up transferring him to a children's hospital nearby to better tend to him because he was so young, but a sodium level as high as his, the damage was already done. Even though they were able to get his sodium levels to come back down, his brain had already swelled up, causing irreversible brain damage, and Garrett was put on life support. On January 23rd, Garrett was taken off life support and declared dead. Everyone questioned how this little boy's sodium levels just skyrocketed, and the only explanation the hospital staff and doctors could come up with was that someone had to have administered something to this little boy to get his sodium levels to spike the way they did. They reported their suspicions to the police and an investigation began. The police searched Lacey's home to find medicine and table salt sitting on a side table next to a pole that would hold an IV bag, which was probably holding Garrett's, little feed bags, because remember, he had that G-tube in still. The police kept digging into Lacey and Garrett's past, discovering Garrett was a sickly baby that had high sodium levels, and the doctors never knew why. They also discovered that Lacey had taken Garrett to 20 different doctors in a 2-year time span. That is a lot of doctors to be seeing. I mean, you'd have to almost see a new doctor every month. She would go to Dr. A saying this and this was wrong with Garrett, and when when they cleared Garrett of that issue she had complained about, then she would take him to Dr. B and complain about the same issue or a different one that was very similar to the next one, until that doctor started asking too many questions, and then she would move on to Dr. C, and so on and so forth. They asked around the fellowship community, and one of the residents said that Lacey had asked them to get rid of a feeding bag for her. They thought nothing of it and they threw it in the trash. That feeding bag, alongside another feeding bag found in Lacey's trash at her home, were retrieved and sent into the lab to have tests ran on them for anything abnormal. And what a shocker, The results from the bags came back, and each bag had the equivalent of 69 small packs of salt in them. That's a lot of salt. Even for you salt lovers out there, that is a lot of salt. And it's not like Garrett knew, because it was going into his G-tube. It was passing all of his taste buds. And you have to imagine just how many feeding bags a day this 5-year-old boy was getting. And there's 69 packets of salt in one feeding bag. Lacey was arrested and indicted by a grand jury on 1 count of second-degree murder and 1 count of first-degree manslaughter. Garrett's death was ruled as a homicide because of the level of sodium in his blood. It was a toxic amount. The prosecution claimed that Lacey knew what she was doing and put salt through the little boy's G-tube while they were at home and at the hospital. Now, the video from the video EEG was shown to the jury at trial. Now, this video was directed straight on Garrett's hospital bed, but what Lacey had done was that she would get Garrett up to take him to the bathroom with a white cup that seemed to be hooked up to his G-tube. When Garrett came back to bed after using the bathroom, he became violently ill, dry heaving. He had diarrhea alongside with the horrible headaches again. Once Garrett had improved, a day or 2 later, Lacey had once again taken him into the bathroom, and he came back to bed violently ill and had symptoms similar to a seizure, but that's not what the EEG showed. It showed the brain waves were slowing down, which indicated that the brain was severely dysfunctioning. Once it was determined that he was brain dead, and that is when Lacey decided to pull him off of life support. Lacey was carrying out internet searches about dangerously high sodium levels 3 days before Garrett was admitted to the hospital, making her well aware of what was going to ultimately happen to Garrett had his sodium levels gotten too high. And while they were in the hospital and Garrett was extremely ill, Lacey took it upon herself to post pictures of them together on her Facebook. And as secrets kept coming out during trial, it was very clear that Lacey liked the sympathy that people gave her and all the attention. She lied about multiple illnesses she herself had growing up, and even lied about who Garrett's father was. He was not a police officer that died in a car accident. He was a former friend that had lived in the same apartment complex as her. They had gotten together and she got pregnant, and while Garrett's father wanted to be a part of Garrett's life, Lacey said no. And that is when she packed up and moved to New York. The defense came back with the claim that there was a medical mistake in Garrett's treatment, that they had mixed up his medications, resulting in severe dehydration, and to treat that, they gave him rapid IV fluids, which then resulted in a high sodium level, causing his brain to swell, and he became brain dead. A month after the trial began, a verdict was reached, and Lacey was found guilty of depraved indifference murder of a child. The judge told her that it's not hard to see that she suffers from a mental disability called Munchausen syndrome, and he will show her mercy by not giving her the maximum sentence, although she did not show her son mercy. And he hopes in the next few years she can come to terms with her illness. The judge clearly had a heart of gold that day, because I probably would have just fed her to the wolves. But she is eligible for parole in 2034, and she will be 46 years old. And what is scary is that, let's say she gets out she's still young enough to work in the healthcare field and do it all again, just not with her own child. Now, I know healthcare facilities of all assortments are supposed to run background checks, but you never know. Maybe they're desperate and in a bind and just need some temporary help. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think she had Mouchon's syndrome? Or do you think she simply just wanted Garrett gone? You'll have to let me know what you think. And until next time, please remember to be safe, and I will see you then. Bye.